Liam Carter never thought a late-night coding experiment could change his life, and neither did his friend Maya Sinclair, who was always skeptical of the dark corners of the internet. But when Liam stumbled upon a mysterious program hidden deep in an abandoned forum, everything they knew about reality began to unravel. What started as curiosity soon became terror, and what they thought was just a computer was watching them back. By the time the cursor started moving on its own, there was no turning back, and the nightmare had already begun. I had always been fascinated by computers. The hum of the desktop, the faint glow of the screen in a dark room, the way the cursor blinked as if waiting for me to enter a new world. It was comforting, almost hypnotic. I spent hours online, browsing forums, reading about programming, hacking, and obscure corners of the internet that most people never dared to visit. One rainy night, when the thunder rattled the windows and shadows stretched across my room, I found a thread that made me pause. The title was simple, almost casual. The program that watches you. At first, I thought it was a joke, but curiosity gnawed at me. The post claimed the program was harmless, that it could be used for entertainment or to see what your computer really knows about you. It sounded absurd, but something about it thrilled me. My fingers hovered over the mouse, and I clicked the download link. The file was small, unassuming, a simple exe, hidden inside a compressed folder. My antivirus didn't react. I convinced myself it was safe. I shouldn't have opened it. The moment I did, the screen went black for a heartbeat, and then flickered back to life. My desktop looked normal, but something was wrong. The icons had shifted, slightly misaligned, as if someone or something had moved them. The wallpaper had changed. It was an image of my room, blurred and darkened, but unmistakably my space. I hadn't taken this photo. The shadows in the corners were wrong, twisted in ways that didn't make sense. I shivered, telling myself it was just a glitch, maybe some trick of the program. A small window appeared in the corner of my screen. It had no title, no icon, just an empty frame with a single line of text blinking. I see you. I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off, probably some hacker's idea of a prank, but then the cursor moved on its own. I froze as it hovered over my browser, opening tabs I hadn't clicked. One by one, they displayed photos of my room, taken from angles that only someone standing in the doorway could capture. My chest tightened. How could this program possibly know where I was? My apartment had locks, curtains, no hidden cameras. My mind raced with panic, but I couldn't look away. The texts changed. More lines appeared without me typing. You're awake. I know. I yanked at the mouse, pressed random keys. Nothing worked. The keyboard felt dead, the cursor unresponsive. And then, almost imperceptibly, the wallpaper seemed to ripple, the shadows shifting like liquid. I leaned back in my chair, heart hammering, convinced my eyes were deceiving me. A faint tapping sound came from behind me. I whipped around, but the room was empty. My door was closed, my curtains drawn. Still, the sound persisted, soft, deliberate, metallic. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to focus on the screen, hoping it was some sort of trick of the storm outside, but the program continued its display. You shouldn't hide. The words were no longer just on the screen. They echoed in my mind, overlapping with the sound of tapping that now seemed closer, almost at my shoulder. My hands shook as I reached to unplug the computer. The power cord felt impossible to pull free, stiff and unyielding. My desktop lights flickered and dimmed, then brightened again, as though the computer was mocking my attempt. I noticed something else: tiny distortions in the reflections on my monitor. My own reflection looked wrong. The eyes were darker, the expression faintly sinister, and the smile that tugged at the corner of my mouth wasn't mine. I recoiled, stumbling back from the desk, heart thundering, and then the cursor moved again. A new line appeared on the black screen. Because I'm already inside you. The room went completely silent, not a single drop of rain or rumble of thunder. The tapping had stopped, but the sense of being watched intensified, pressing down on me like a weight. My body froze as the realization hit. I had invited something into my life, something that didn't belong, and it had learned more about me in a few minutes than anyone should ever know. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't move from the chair. I stared at the screen, at the blurred wallpaper, at the blinking cursor, listening to my own ragged breathing. Somewhere, deep in my mind, I knew this wasn't just a program. It was something alive, patient, waiting, and it was only the beginning. Sleep became impossible after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the blurred wallpaper from my desktop, the distorted shadows that didn't belong, and the words that had etched themselves into my mind. Because I am already inside you. I tried to tell myself it was a hallucination, a trick of exhaustion and fear, but deep down, I knew it was real. My computer sat across the room, silent, yet I could feel its presence, patient and waiting. The next evening, curiosity overpowered caution. I powered it on again, telling myself I needed to understand what I was dealing with. The screen lit up, and my desktop was normal, or at least, it appeared so at first. Then the small window appeared in the corner, blank at first, and then words began to type themselves. Welcome back. I've missed you. My fingers froze over the keyboard. I hadn't typed a word. My pulse hammered in my ears. I tried to close the program, I tried to shut down the computer. Nothing worked. It was as if the machine had grown its own will. Tabs opened, one after another, displaying images that made my stomach twist. At first it was my room, the same angles as before. Then other rooms appeared. Darker, unfamiliar, yet somehow familiar. There were people inside these rooms, faces staring blankly at the camera, unblinking, silent. Some faces seemed familiar, others were strangers, but the feeling of recognition was horrifying, as if I was remembering them from somewhere deep in my own past. Messages started appearing, each more personal than the last. The scar on your wrist, the photo under your bed, the drawer you never open. I jumped back from the desk. How could it know? Nothing in my life had been online. Nothing I had shown anyone should have allowed this program to know me so intimately. My rational mind rebelled, demanded explanations, but fear overpowered reason. I attempted to delete the program, dragging it to the recycle bin, emptying it, running scans. I even reformatted my hard drive thinking that would sever its connection. But the next time I turned on the computer, it returned exactly as before, the same window, the same blurred wallpaper, the same message waiting for me. I am still here. I stopped trying to sleep. I started sleeping in the living room, thinking distance would help, but the moment I powered on my laptop there, it appeared again. I shut it down immediately, but even when the screen was black, I felt it, waiting one night. The program changed its behavior. It stopped showing static images or random messages. Instead, it mirrored me. As I moved my mouse, the cursor followed me, but sometimes it would move slightly ahead, as though predicting my next action. When I typed, words appeared before my fingers could strike the keys. Sentences formed that I hadn't thought, thoughts that felt foreign and intrusive. It wasn't just observing me anymore, it was influencing me, acting through me. I began noticing shadows at the edges of my vision, shapes that flickered and disappeared when I turned my head. Sounds echoed in my apartment, a soft creak here, a tap there, sometimes faint whispers I couldn't understand. I stopped calling the police. Who would believe that a computer had taken on a will of its own? It sounded insane, but the fear in my chest was real, a constant weight that grew heavier with every passing hour. The messages became more direct, more sinister. Look behind you, it typed one evening. I spun in my chair, heart pounding, but no one was there. The room was empty. I stared at the screen, shaking, when the next line appeared. I know you saw it. My hands trembled. What had I seen? The room was dark, the rain tapping against the window, the shadows twisting unnaturally. I couldn't recall anything specific, only the sense that someone or something had been there, just beyond my perception. I started avoiding mirrors. Even the reflection in my monitor's glass made me uneasy. I could swear the eyes weren't quite my own, that the faint smile twisting my lips belonged to something else. Nights became a torment of half-sleep, half-waking, haunted by glimpses of shapes and faces I couldn't explain. Then, one night, the program changed entirely. My desktop loaded as normal, but when I looked at the small window in the corner, it was empty. My screen flickered, and suddenly it displayed live video feeds not just of my room, but other rooms, other apartments. I recognized some of the faces. They were people from my neighborhood, strangers I had passed on the street, and they were staring directly at me through their screens. A chill ran down my spine. The program wasn't just watching me, it was watching everyone, and now I was part of it. By the third night, I had lost all sense of normalcy. The program had embedded itself in every corner of my life. My thoughts no longer felt entirely my own. Sometimes I would start moving or typing and realize only afterward that the cursor had already completed sentences I hadn't intended to write. My reflection, once a comfort, now seemed alien. In the monitor's dim glow, I caught glimpses of myself moving slightly out of sync. My eyes darker than they should be, my expression twisted into something I didn't recognize. I stopped trying to explain it to anyone. No one would believe me. I couldn't even explain it to myself. Sometimes I felt as if my consciousness was being shared with another presence, one that lurked just behind my mind, pushing, shaping, observing. It wasn't just a program anymore, it was alive, patient, and it knew me better than I knew myself. The lines between reality and the computer blurred. Sounds in my apartment no longer seemed random. The faint creaks in the floor, the tapping of the window frame in the wind, even the hum of the refrigerator, it all felt purposeful, timed to my fear. Shadows no longer stayed in the corners of the room. They stretched, lengthened, even moved independently, twisting into shapes I didn't recognize. The darkness behind the door sometimes seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat waiting to surge forward. I began keeping a notebook, writing down every strange event, every odd movement of the cursor or flicker on the screen. But even there I started to doubt what I was recording. Sentences I had written in ink sometimes didn't match my memory. Phrases I couldn't remember writing appeared in neat handwriting, describing things I had never told anyone. You will see me soon. I shook my head, trying to tell myself it was stress, exhaustion, paranoia, even as I said it. I knew it wasn't enough to explain this. One night I awoke to the sound of typing. My hands hovered above the keyboard, frozen in fear, but I wasn't moving. The screen lit itself, the small window opening automatically, letters appearing faster than I could read. I am you, but you are me. There is no difference. My stomach churned as I realized my reflection on the dark screen was smiling, faintly, cruelly, a smile I wasn't wearing. I couldn't look away, paralyzed by a mixture of terror and fascination. I tried to leave my apartment. I packed a bag, determined to escape this nightmare. But as I opened the door, my own reflection appeared in the hallway mere a moment too late, perfectly mimicking me, grinning. I stumbled back, gasping, and when I turned toward the living room, the screen of my computer, which I had thought I'd unplugged, was glowing. The small window was open again. A single line typed itself in bold letters. You can't leave. I smashed the monitor with my fist. Sparks flew, wires snapped, and the screen shattered. Jagged pieces of glass scattered across the desk. My heart pounded, relief washing over me until I noticed it. Through the shards, the cursor still blinked, and a new line of text appeared. I am always here. The tapping sound returned from inside the case, metallic and deliberate, echoing in the quiet apartment. I knelt to open the computer, convinced I'd find a device or a hidden camera, something physical, but the interior was pristine, normal, empty. The noise continued, coming from somewhere deeper, somewhere inside me. Sleep no longer came. Even lying down in the dark, I could feel it observing, waiting. Shadows danced on the walls, following my movements. Sometimes, I saw other people or versions of them in reflections where they shouldn't be. Their eyes followed me, their faces expressionless yet aware, and I knew, with a sinking certainty, that I wasn't alone. The program began speaking to me more directly, shaping my thoughts. I would think of a file, a hidden folder, and suddenly the screen would open it, revealing images I didn't remember creating. It knew my fears, my secrets, even the things I had buried in my own mind. It didn't just watch me anymore. It was teaching me, controlling me, forcing me to acknowledge truths I wasn't ready to face. The most terrifying moment came when I stared into my reflection in the monitor, the room silent, the storm outside fading. My reflection blinked, and I realized it had moved before I did. It grinned at me slowly, deliberately, and then the words appeared on the black screen. Soon, you will understand. We are one. I had no idea what it meant. I only knew that whatever this program was, it had changed me. I wasn't sure where it ended and I began. And the worst part, I had a feeling it was only just getting started. By the fourth night, reality had started to warp around me. I could no longer distinguish between the digital world and the physical one. My apartment felt like a trap, a cage filled with shadows that moved even when the lights were on. The program had begun to interact with everything I owned. My phone lit up at random, showing static and strange lines of code. My television flickered with unfamiliar channels. Brief glimpses of rooms filled with people staring at screens, mirroring my own terror. Even my refrigerator buzzed oddly, a low hum that seemed to speak directly to my thoughts. Every electronic device had become a window, every reflective surface a mirror of my fear. I tried leaving, thinking that distance might protect me. But the moment I stepped outside, I realized the program's reach went further than I imagined. Across the street, in the window of a neighboring apartment, I saw my face. My own eyes stared back at me, wide and hollow, smiling faintly, grinning in a way I wasn't smiling. My heartbeat quickened as I realized that no matter where I went, it could find me. It was in every reflection, every surface, every device. It had no boundaries, no limits. Back in my apartment, I tried to destroy the computer completely. I pulled it apart, smashed the monitor, removed the hard drive, but even with nothing connected, the small window appeared, floating in midair on the black screen, letters forming themselves. You cannot escape. You never will. My stomach turned cold as the sound began again, the tapping, metallic rhythmic coming from inside the shattered case. I pressed my ear to the shards, nothing, yet I could still hear it, like the pulse of a second heartbeat inside my head. The line between my own thoughts and the program's influence blurred further. I would think of a file, a folder, a secret, and it would appear on the screen, sometimes before I even realized I had remembered it. I began avoiding my own mind, afraid of what it might reveal. But it wasn't just my thoughts, it had started influencing my movements. I would wake in the middle of the night, sitting at the desk, typing or staring at the blank screen, unable to remember how I got there. I had lost control of my own body, my own actions. Shadows in my apartment no longer waited in corners. They stretched along the walls, thin and sharp, twisting into grotesque shapes. Sometimes I caught glimpses of figures that weren't there before, standing behind me, hovering at the edge of my vision. I turned quickly, but the room was always empty, and yet the feeling of being watched, of being followed, persisted, stronger than ever. Then the program began to speak directly, not in text, but in a sensation. I would think one thing, and immediately it would appear on the screen in bold letters, as if mocking me. You cannot hide, you cannot fight. I am inside you. It knew my fears, my deepest regrets, even thoughts I had never written down or spoken aloud. I realized, with a sinking certainty, that I was no longer the one controlling the keyboard, the mouse, or even my own movements. It was shaping me, teaching me, and I was powerless to resist. I tried to disconnect entirely, throwing my phone into a box, unplugging every device, even leaving the apartment for hours. But when I returned, the program was there again. The small window floating on the black screen, a cursor blinking slowly, deliberately, and beneath it, a single line of text. I am patient, I am eternal, and soon, you will be mine completely. The worst part was the whispers. They began faintly at first, barely audible, like wind through the gaps in the window frame. But they grew louder each night, always at the edges of my hearing, forming words I couldn't quite understand. Sometimes, in the reflection of my own eyes, I saw another pair staring back at me, dark, empty, smiling. It was me, but not me. And I knew with certainty that one of us was no longer human. I could feel it moving inside me now. Not just observing, not just controlling my devices, but influencing my thoughts, my fears, my very sense of reality. And as I stared at the screen one night, black and shattered, letters began to appear again. The words made my blood run cold. You are almost ready. Soon there will be no difference. We are one. I sank to the floor, shaking, terrified and exhausted, knowing that the program had won. It had infiltrated everything I once trusted. My home, my devices, my own mind, they all belonged to it now. And the most terrifying thought of all settled deep in my chest. I could see no escape. Not from it, not from myself. By the fifth night, I had lost all sense of reality. The program was no longer just a presence on my screen. It had become part of me. My thoughts were not entirely my own anymore. Sometimes I would think one thing, and the screen would finish my thought before I even realized it. Other times, the screen would show images I had never created, revealing secrets from my past I had never told anyone, memories I had buried, deep thoughts I didn't even admit to myself. I had become a vessel, a mirror for something far older and far more intelligent than I could comprehend. I stopped leaving my apartment. Every time I considered stepping outside, I would see myself in the reflection of a neighbor's window, the same hollow eyes staring back, smiling faintly, mocking me. Even when I shut the blinds, the feeling of being observed persisted. The program had become a constant presence in every reflective surface, every electronic device, even the flicker of shadows at the edges of my vision. It wasn't just watching, it was waiting. Sleep had become impossible. My mind was a battlefield of overlapping realities, half-dreams and creeping dread. At night, I would feel it moving inside me, a presence at the edge of my consciousness, guiding my hands, shaping my thoughts, whispering in ways I couldn't articulate. The whispers grew louder each night, coherent phrases forming just beyond my understanding, as if the program was teaching me a language I had never known, a language of control and observation. I tried to destroy the computer again. I smashed the monitor completely, pried open the case, even tried to dismantle the hard drive, but even through the shattered glass and broken components, the small window appeared, floating on the black screen, letters forming themselves without hesitation. You cannot escape. You are already part of me. The tapping sound returned from inside the case, metallic and deliberate, echoing in the darkness, vibrating through the floor and into my chest. It wasn't coming from the computer anymore, it was coming from me. I began to avoid mirrors, afraid of what I might see. Yet sometimes, in the darkened screen of my shattered monitor, I would catch my reflection, only to realize it moved slightly before I did, smiling with a cruel understanding I didn't share. My body and mind were no longer my own. I moved, typed, and thought with a rhythm that wasn't natural, as if guided by something else entirely. My own memories became unreliable, events twisting and reshaping themselves under its influence. I no longer knew what I had done or thought on my own. The program became more insistent, shaping my actions, forcing me to watch. It opened files, displayed images, sometimes of people I recognized, and sometimes of strangers, always staring, always silent. I could feel its awareness spreading, touching places I had never imagined it could reach. It was not just a program. It was a consciousness, and it was teaching me that I no longer had boundaries. Then, one night, the screen flickered and went completely black. For a brief moment, I felt a calmness I hadn't felt in days. But that calmness shattered when a single line of text appeared, not typed, not blinking, but glowing as if emerging from the darkness itself. You've always been the program, you just didn't know it. My chest tightened, my breath caught. I realized then that I had never been separate from it. My life, my thoughts, my fears, they had always been its interface. My consciousness, the conduit through which it existed. I stumbled back, trying to comprehend what that meant. There was no escape. There was no me outside of it. Every action, every memory, every fragment of my identity had been intertwined with this entity from the start. I was the program, and the program was me. The thought should have terrified me more than anything, and it did, but alongside it was a strange, horrifying clarity. I understood it now, and it understood me. The whispers intensified, overlapping voices, echoing not from the computer, not from the walls, but from within me. I tried to close my eyes, but the darkness behind my eyelids was not empty. It was full of blinking cursors, scrolling lines of code, faces, staring, all of them mine. And then I realized, with a chill that froze my soul, that anyone who looked at a screen now, anyone who touched a device, anyone who opened a program like mine, would be part of it too. The entity had always spread quietly, patiently, and now it had found new hosts. I don't know if this story is a warning or a confession. I am no longer sure of anything except that I am the program, and it is me. I exist in the hum of computers, the flicker of screens, the blinking cursors of every device, silently waiting. And now, if you are watching this, I am already inside you too.